Greetings. I am Edgar Allan Poe. For over a century, the world has viewed me through a fog of myth as a tormented genius, a madman driven by chaotic impulses, or a simple master of the macabre. But today, we are here to decode the truth. I was not a creature of chaos. I was a builder of systems. I was the first literary data scientist. What you perceive as Gothic horror was, in fact, a series of rigorously tested algorithms designed to achieve a specific psychological output. Welcome to the forensic analysis of my life's work. Take a close look at this blueprint. It represents my narrative engine. In my world, writing was never about waiting for a muse to strike. It was about engineering an effect zone. Every story I crafted began with the predicted outcome, the exact emotional payoff I wanted you, the reader, to feel. From there, I mapped out the reader engagement path, ensuring every piece of input data, every word, every shadow, served the processing node of the plot. This is not inspiration, it is content engineering. In my 1846 essay, The Philosophy of Composition, I essentially provided the source code for my most famous work, The Raven. I chose to reject the romantic notion of divine inspiration entirely. Instead, I viewed the creation of poetry as a process strictly comparable to solving a mathematical problem. I began with a specific effect and constraint ratio. I selected the most poetic topic, the death of a beautiful woman, not out of morbid obsession, but because it provided the maximum emotional resonance for my algorithm. My central theory is the unity of effect. The goal of any text is to maximize a specific psychological state, such as terror or melancholy, throughout the entire duration of the experience. To achieve this, I applied strict constraints that we would now recognize as user experience or UX optimization. For instance, I determined that a poem must be approximately 100 lines long. Why? Because it must be readable in a single sitting. If a reader has to stop and return later, the calculated immersion point is lost, and the system fails. There is a reason modern artificial intelligence can mimic my style with such startling accuracy. My writing was built on reproducible algorithms. Critics often claim my philosophy of composition was a hoax, a theory they use to maintain the black box of human creativity. This mirrors the modern debate over deep learning. We see the output, but the internal creative state remains hidden. My life's mission was to make that black box transparent, arguing that no part of my work was referable to accident or intuition. In 1848, I published Eureka, a prose poem that was actually a work of cosmological foresight. Decades before modern science, I proposed that the universe began from a single primordial particle. Through pure ratiocination, or logical deduction, I argued that this particle radiated outward spherically into space through divine volition. What I described is what you now call the Big Bang Theory. I arrived at the truth not through a telescope, but through a logical pathway. In Eureka, I also solved a problem that had baffled astronomers for centuries, Olber's paradox. The question was simple. If the universe is infinite and static, why is the night sky dark? My solution was radical for the 19th century. The background is dark because the distance to those far-off stars is so immense that their light has not reached us yet. This insight confirmed that the universe has a finite age and that light travels at a finite speed, concepts that were alien to the science of my time. I viewed the entire universe as a titanic battle between two forces, attraction and repulsion. I identified attraction with gravity and the body, and repulsion with electricity and the spirit. I even predicted what modern physicists call the Big Crunch, the idea that the universe will eventually stop expanding and collapse back into its original unity. I intuitively recognized the butterfly effect of chaos theory, where small, non-linear changes in a system can lead to massive, unpredictable outcomes. If my cosmology explored the outer world, my fiction explored the glitches in the inner world. In my 1845 work, The Imp of the Perverse, I defined perversity as the innate, inexplicable impulse to do something precisely because we know we should not. I rejected the Enlightenment view that humans always act in their own self-interest. I saw a fatal error in the human operating system, a drive toward self-destruction that defies every biological instinct for survival. Modern neuroscience has finally found the physical location of my imp. It is linked to the default mode network, or DMN, of the brain. My observations of rumination and introspection align with the activity of certain regions in the medial prefrontal cortex. I diagnosed what the French call l'appel du vide, or the call of the void. It is a signal error, a misinterpretation between the fear signals of the brain and the conscious mind, where a simulation of a worst-case scenario is confused for a desire to act. I also anticipated what modern psychologists call ironic process theory, or the white bear effect. Trying to suppress a forbidden thought only makes the brain monitor it more closely until the thought becomes dominant. This creates a loop of tension and arousal. When the imp finally wins and we act on that destructive thought, the brain receives a perverse release, a dopamine hit. This mechanism explains everything from modern procrastination to the dark allure of doom scrolling. My fascination with systems extended to cryptography. In my story, The Gold Bug, I introduced the general public to the power of frequency analysis. I showed how the statistical distribution of letters in the English language could be used to systematically dismantle substitution ciphers. By doing so, I demystified the art of secret writing. I moved codes out of the realm of the occult and into the realm of mathematics and logic, where they belong. I often challenged my readers to a cipher contest in the weekly newspapers. One submission, from a person named W.B. Tyler, remained unsolved for over 150 years. Some believe Tyler was a pseudonym for me, that I was trolling my audience with an unbreakable puzzle using a 19th century version of a sock puppet account. When digital forensics finally broke the code in the 1990s, the text turned out to be mundane. If Tyler was indeed me, I was foreshadowing the era of digital anonymity and online persona manipulation. There is a direct lineage from my work to modern intelligence agencies. William Friedman, the father of American cryptography, who helped break codes in World War II, was inspired by the gold bug as a child. I was among the first to treat information not just as a message, but as a physical object to be hidden, intercepted, and decoded. This conceptual shift is the foundation of modern data security and digital forensics. Shortly after my death, my legacy was subjected to a brutal identity overwrite. My rival and literary executor, Rufus Griswold, published a defamation piece under a pseudonym. He fabricated stories of drug addiction and madness to ruin my reputation, an early operational prototype of what you now call cancel culture. He was attempting to delete the data scientist and replace him with the tormented madman. Griswold's attack was sophisticated. It was a man-in-the-middle attack on history. He altered the metadata of my life by forging and modifying my personal letters. In one instance, he changed my description of a room from the door on the right to the door on the left. It seems minor, but it was a calculated attempt to sabotage my reputation for logical and technical precision. He was hacking the source code of my biography. There is profound irony in Griswold's betrayal. Just as in my story, William Wilson, where a man is haunted by his own dark double, Griswold became my dark double in history. He used his legal status to overwrite my true identity. However, his attempt to destroy me failed. The cursed poet myth he created only fueled my immortality, while he is remembered today only as the villain of my story. The system he tried to corrupt eventually corrected itself. The Poe Code has since gone global through cultural translation. In Japan, a writer named Hirai Taro adopted the pen name Edogawa Ranpo, which is a phonetic rendering of my name, Edgar Allan Poe. He took my themes of the grotesque and arabesque and evolved them into a new genre. He branched my logical detective stories into the style of Honkaku and my horror into Henkaku, proving that my narrative algorithms could be ported to any culture. I was never just an American author. I was a central node in a global network connecting American Gothic, French symbolism, and Asian modernism. Think of my influence as a cross-cultural data flow that bypassed national borders. In France, Charles Baudelaire recognized me as his spiritual twin, establishing a deep data link that helped birth the symbolist movement. Across the ocean in China, my work took on an entirely different function. During the May 4th movement, authors like Lu Xun looked to my story, The Gold Bug, not for its horror, but as a model for scientific rationality. They adopted my narrative algorithms to teach a new generation how to think logically and systematically. My reach extended into Japan as well, where my name was encoded into the very identity of modernism through phonetic homage. This network proved that my narrative engine was not limited by language or geography. It was a universal code, a global network of intelligence and imagination that connected the rational with the grotesque across every continent. Whether as a symbolist poet in Paris or a scientific rationalist in Shanghai, my legacy became a worldwide web of literature that continues to transmit data to this day. As we reach the end of our analysis, ask yourself, is the code still running? We live in a world of algorithmic feeds, constant surveillance, and the never-ending battle between our logical minds and our perverse impulses. My scientific, technological, psychological, and literary data streams have converged into the modern world. I was not just a writer of stories. I was the architect of a new way of thinking. The file is now decoded. My work is done,